Hey everyone, this is Daniel Rodriguez, and this is my PowerPoint presentation for assignment number 7, the one where we have to give a narrated PowerPoint lecture. Um, Unfortunately, I've been having technical difficulties with PowerPoint. I'm using a MacBook, and for some reason, the PowerPoint on my MacBook isn't letting me add some narration to my PowerPoint presentation. So um, I'm gonna have to do this. I really hate to do this, but I feel like that this is the only way I can add some narration to what I created. Um, Again, as I explained in the discussion forum post, I do have a YouTube video of my presentation. The only thing is that it doesn't have the narration added to it. I actually took the time to narrate my PowerPoint slides, and I even saved it on my laptop. But for some reason, whenever I replay it and play it over again, I couldn't hear the narration. So if you look at my YouTube presentation, all you're gonna see is the PowerPoint slides. You're not gonna hear the narration that I added to those PowerPoint slides. So that's why I have to make a separate video for my auditory narration because the YouTube video just doesn't have my narration, unfortunately. Um, and I thought that this was a creative way to do this. I, uh, uh, I, I guess you guys can look at me while I while I narrate my PowerPoint slides. The good thing is that because I uploaded my presentation on YouTube, you guys can play and pause and stop the presentation if you need to. I'm going to align this narration right here with the presentation on YouTube. So really it shouldn't be an issue because as long as you have both the YouTube presentation and this video right here open, you can pretty much align what I'm saying to the slide. So for instance, if I talk about something on slide number 5, you can just scroll the YouTube video until you reach slide number 5 on my presentation, and you can keep it still so that you can look at slide number 5 as I talk about the slide. So I'll be going in the exact same order that the PowerPoint on YouTube is. So whatever order you see there on the YouTube video, I'll go and uh, present in that same exact order in this video right here. So does that make sense? You can pretty much align what I'm saying here to the YouTube video. And again, I apologize, but my MacBook isn't the PowerPoint that I'm using isn't letting me add narration, so I can see the slides just fine. Everything on the slides are complete, like all my text and bullets and all that are there, and I was able to save it as a video and upload the video onto YouTube, and I was also able to add the link to the discussion forum post, but it's just that my narration isn't there. Like you can't hear any narration. No matter how much I turn up the volume, you just can't hear it. So that's why I'm adding this video too, in addition, because so that you guys can actually hear me narrate the PowerPoint presentation. So I hope that this isn't too confusing. That's why I added both of these to the post so that you guys can look at or look at the presentation and listen to me talk at the same time. And again, just pause whenever you have to. It's a YouTube video, so just pause. And if you get to a certain point and you need to stop, just press pause on the YouTube video, and so that you can look at the slide while you hear me speak. I think this is the only way that I can narrate and put up a PowerPoint presentation at the same time. But enough with that. Pardon me, excuse my rambling, but just wanted to make it clear so that you guys aren't confused as to why I'm doing this. And again, I think it's nice that you guys can look at me at the same time. So here I am. I'm just in my upstairs bedroom. Um, Okay, well, enough of that. Let's get to the presentation. I'll be looking at the PowerPoint slides on my laptop while I do this. So if it seems like I'm looking to the side a lot, if I'm not making eye contact with you guys, if you guys feel like that I'm doing that a little too much, then I apologize. But if I do that, if I don't make eye contact, or if I look to the side a lot, that's because I'm actually trying to look at the PowerPoint presentation at the same time, because obviously I need to see I need to know what I'm going to talk about. So um, whenever I do that, I might go like that a little bit. So if I do that a lot in this presentation, then I'm sorry, but I have to do it. So that's the only way I can present. All right, so let's get to the presentation now. Okay. Okay, so starting from the first slide, so go to the YouTube video that I posted, or go to the YouTube video that I linked to the discussion post. I'm going to start from the very first slide, and again, just pause if it doesn't align with what I'm saying. So this presentation is about the health belief model. Again, I'm Daniel Rodriguez, and I decided to do my presentation on the health belief model, and I will explain momentarily. I hope you guys enjoy my presentation. I'm pretty sure you will. It's not going to be that long. It's only 11 slides, so it's a very concise, succinct presentation. Nevertheless, it has a lot of good information that you guys will find helpful, and I hope my goal is to make the health belief model very clear and very easy at the end. I hope that at the end of the presentation, you guys will know a lot more about the health belief model, and you will gain a better understanding of how to use it, when to use it, etc. So here is the presentation. So going on to slide number 2 now. Okay, so this is basically an outline of what I'll be talking about in this presentation. I will cover all of these topics in this exact same order. Um, I will spend only about a few minutes on each topic because I don't want my video to be too long and I don't want to bore you guys too much. So I'll try not to ramble. I'll make it short and sweet, and I'll try to fly through these slides. So I hope that's what happens. If not, then I'm sorry. Okay, I will talk first about why I picked the health belief model. Of course, we all picked a certain health theory or health model. I decided to do my presentation on the health belief model, and I will explain why. I have 4 reasons why I chose the health belief model, and that will be the first topic of this presentation. Excuse me. Okay, and then I will go into the history of the health belief model. Um, I won't I won't go on with I won't mention any trivial details or minute concepts or facts. I won't go over anything unnecessary. The only stuff that I will discuss are the important stuff, the main ideas. So although I will talk about the history of the health belief model, I won't go into too much detail as far as the history. I'll just explain the most important aspects and the most important facts. So again, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Okay, and then I'll talk about what the health belief model is. Like, what is it? What is it used for? Why does it exist? Who uses it and for what reason? I'll talk about that in the third section. I will list and define all 6 constructs of the health belief model. As you guys know, the health belief model has 6 constructs, and I will list and define all 6 of them. And then in section 4, I will give you guys a good example of someone using and applying the health belief model. Of course, if you look at knowing the definition of something or the description of something or a concept or a theory or or a terminology, etc. If you know the definition of something, that helps obviously because you know what it is. but you might not know how to apply it. So although I talk about what the health belief model is in the third section, in the fourth section I will show you guys how to actually apply it. Because of course, you may know what it is, but if you don't know how to apply it and use it, then it's not going to really benefit you. So it's good to know how to use the health belief model. And in section 4, again, I'll give a good example. And after you look at the example, you'll see how you can use each construct and how to apply each construct and how to relate it to whatever you're working on. So I will go over that in section 4. Okay, and in section 5, I will talk about the pros and cons of the health belief model. Of course, none of the theories that we went over in this class are perfect. Each theory has its own disadvantages, and the health belief model is no different. There are a lot of disadvantages associated with using the health belief model. It's a good model. I mean, it's a good health theory. It's not a bad health theory at all, and that, as a matter of fact, that's why I decided to present. That's why I decided to do a presentation on it, because I think it's a good model. It's a very effective and useful health model. But of course, it's not perfect, and there are certain disadvantages that you should know about. And in section 5, I'll talk about the pros and cons of the health belief model. I'll give you guys a list of pros, and I'll give you guys, and I'll give you guys a list of cons. So that will be section 5 of this presentation. And last but not least, I will explain when I'll try to answer the question, when should you use the health belief model? When is it appropriate? When should you use the health belief model? When should you avoid it? Of course, you shouldn't use the health belief model all the time. You should use it sometimes. In some cases, it will help you, but in other cases, it won't help you. As a matter of fact, it might make your situation more difficult, and you might want to use another theory instead. So I will talk about that. I'll explain how I'll tell you when you should use it and when you shouldn't use it. Because again, in some instances, it may help you, but in other instances, the health belief model is simply not the best choice. It's not. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad choice, but in some cases, it's not the best choice. Another theory is the best choice. So I'll talk about that in the last section of this presentation. And as you guys can see in the bottom of this slide, I use the abbreviation HBM in this presentation. HBM just stands for health belief model. It's just a shorthand way of writing health belief model. I don't want to write out health belief model all the time because obviously it's very verbose and takes up a lot of space. I want to save space and breath, so I just decided to use the HBM abbreviation instead. But HBM just means the same thing as health belief model. So whenever you see HBM in my presentation, it just means a health belief model. All right, progressing to the third slide now. Okay, I will talk a little bit about why I picked the health belief model. I picked it for 4 reasons. My first reason for picking the health belief model is because it's my favorite theory out of all the theories that we've discussed in this class. It's my favorite. We all have our own favorite theory. I'm pretty sure you guys have your own favorite theories. The health belief model just happens to be my favorite theory. And of course, that doesn't mean that I don't like any of the other theories. Some of the other theories are good too, in my opinion, but if I had to call one of the theories my favorite, if I had to pick a favorite theory, it would definitely be the health behavior theory, or HBM. It's just the one that I like the most, so that's why I decided to do a presentation on it. Okay, and my second reason for picking the HBM is because I think it's very important and useful. And if you look at if you go to the slide that has all my or if you listen to what the constructs are, and of course we all know what the constructs are, but if you take another look at the constructs of the HBM, you'll probably see why the HBM is such an important and useful theory. It's just the constructs are very good. I like the health belief model because The 6 constructs that make up the health belief model are very good. The constructs are very relevant. They're very useful. And if you know how to use the constructs, if you know how to use the theory, then yes, the health belief model will be useful. Of course, if you're not good at using theories and if you don't know how to apply the HBM, you're obviously not going to find it useful. But once you learn how to use the health belief model, and once you learn how to apply the model and the theory, once you learn how to apply the theory, the model, and the constructs that make up the model, then you're going to become better at using the health belief model, and then you'll eventually find that it's a useful theory. But of course, you need to learn how to use it first. Um, and that's why in this presentation right here, I will talk about how to use the health belief model and how to use the constructs that make up the health belief model. Um, so I'll definitely talk about that in this presentation so that you guys can actually apply the health belief model and find it useful. Okay, and my third reason for using the health belief model, it's a relatively simple model. It's not a very complex or convoluted model. Some of the other models that we went over in class are a little convoluted in my opinion, or they're kind of complex. They're not easy to understand. The health belief model, in my opinion, is rather simple. On the other hand, the definitions of the constructs are not that complicated. The constructs are easy to understand. They're very straightforward. They have good, solid, easy to understand definitions, and that's why I like the health belief model. It's not a confusing theory, and because it's not confusing and because it's simple and straightforward, it's easy for me to use. Obviously, I don't know about you guys, but I have a harder time using something that's very complicated and complex. So that's why I like the health belief model. It's a very simple, straightforward health theory, and it's very usable. And last but not least, I think that the HBM is pretty accurate. Again, if you look at the constructs, you'll see why. Um, I think that the constructs of the HBM do a good job describing things the correct way. If you look at the constructs and if you think about the constructs that make up the HBM, and you compare the constructs to what happens in your life, in your personal life, and in other people's lives in real life, if you compare the constructs of the HBM to what happens in real life, you'll see that there's a connection. You'll see that the constructs do accurately describe what goes on in real life. And again, if you look at the constructs and then think about your own life, you're probably going to say to yourself, wow, the HBM does do a good job describing what happens in my life. It's a very accurate representation of what goes on in reality. So you're going to think that it's accurate because you're going to see that it's accurate because the constructs of the HBM do a good job describing reality and explaining what happens in real life. And it's a very realistic representation of what happens in people's actual lives. It's not theoretical. It's representative of reality in my opinion, or not well, in my opinion, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people will agree with me. So those are my 4 reasons for. Excuse me, throat's a little dry. Those are my 4 reasons for using the health belief model, and I think those are pretty good reasons. So I picked it. I picked the health belief model. Progressing to slide number 4. This is just a little. I'm just going to talk about some of the history associated with the health belief model. It originated during the 1950s, and Godfrey Hobsbawm is the one social scientist who is associated the most with the health belief model. During the 1950s, Godfrey Hobsbawm, he was a social psychologist. He wanted to answer a classic question. He wanted to know why residents did not take advantage of free screening for tuberculosis. Now, during that time, the USPHS, which stands for United States Public Health Service, the USPHS pretty much basically funded and sponsored free tuberculosis screening. And not only was the screening free, but it was also accessible. By that I mean that it was right. It was done right in people's neighborhoods. So, so the you have this tuberculosis screening that's free, and that's very accessible. It's right in people's neighborhoods. Yet Hotchbaum noticed that a lot of residents simply did not take advantage of this free accessible screening, and he wanted to know why. Why is it that TB screening that was free and accessible, well, how come people didn't take advantage of it? Why did people let that opportunity pass? Well, Hotchbaum concluded a few things, and because of his conclusions, he pretty much set the stage for the development of the health belief model. He pretty much initiated, he was the first one to develop the health belief model. And of course, the health belief model didn't exist as we know it back then. But because of Hotchbaum's conclusions, the health belief model was born. And of course, later psychologists would add to the would later add to the health belief model. But he was the first one to actually begin something similar to what the health belief model is. So he basically concluded a couple of important things. He concluded that people were most likely to undergo screening for tuberculosis if they thought, if number one, they thought that they were at risk for tuberculosis. This is an example of perceived susceptibility. It's one of the constructs of the health belief model. And Hotchbaum concluded that having free and accessible tuberculosis screening was not enough to make people go and get the screening. People took advantage of the screening if they thought that they were at risk or vulnerable or susceptible to the disease, which is tuberculosis. So even though it was free and accessible, if someone didn't feel like he or she was at risk for developing tuberculosis or contracting or getting tuberculosis, if he didn't feel susceptible to tuberculosis, then he didn't undergo the screening. I mean, and it makes sense, like why undergo TB screening if you don't think you're going to get TB? Like, yeah, it's free and it's accessible too, but why bother? Why spend the time? I'm not even going to get TB, so why even undergo the screening in the first place? Even if it's free, I'm not going to waste time going there if I don't think I'm going to get TB. So that's what some people thought. Some people didn't think that they were susceptible, even though we know that TB is very communicable and a lot of people can get it. But some people didn't feel susceptible, and those people probably most likely did not take advantage of the screening that the USPHS funded. So that was the first conclusion that Hotchbaum came to. He also concluded that, as you can see in the second bullet below, number two, he also concluded that they believed that they underwent the screening if they believed that there was some benefit to getting the TB screening. So in addition to feeling susceptible to tuberculosis, the residents also needed to feel like there was some benefit or good consequence associated with undergoing the screening. If they felt that the screening wasn't really associated with good consequences, if they felt that they weren't going to benefit from the screening, then they didn't bother they didn't bother. They just let the opportunity pass because they didn't think that anything good would come out of it. So they didn't feel like it was an important procedure. They didn't feel like it was going to help them in any way because they didn't feel like that there was a benefit to it. If, on the other hand, someone thought that there was a benefit associated with undergoing the TB screening, then he was more likely to take advantage of the screening because he knows that, or he thinks that there is something good will happen as a result of the TB screening. So if they thought that there was a good consequence, then yeah, they went after the screening. But if they didn't think that there was a good consequence, if they didn't see any benefits to having the screening done on them, then they didn't take advantage of it. So it was that simple. And that's also an example of another one of the health belief model constructs. This time it's an example of perceived benefits. And perceived susceptibility and perceived benefits are two of the 6 health belief model constructs. And I will go into detail a little later. I'll talk about the constructs, I'll define them, and I'll explain what each one is. Moving on to slide number 5. Here are the basics of the HBM. Basically, the HBM, again, it stands for Health Belief Model, and I gave you guys another reminder. I put another asterisk there in the bottom of that slide. And again, I just reminded you guys that HBM stands for Health Belief Model. Again, the HBM has 6 constructs, and the reason why it's called the Health Belief Model is because the theory focuses on the person's beliefs. The Health Belief Model suggests that a person's behaviors and choices depend on, well, let me put it this way. The Health Belief Model suggests that that how a person acts and what choices a person makes depends on the person's beliefs. The HBM states that we behave a certain way and we make certain choices because of certain beliefs that we have. Therefore, if you want to change a person's behavior, whether it's having them adopt a new behavior or get rid of an old behavior, we need to change that person's beliefs because our behaviors depend on our beliefs. We do certain things, we behave a certain way because of certain beliefs and perceptions that we hold. The major drawback of this HBM is that it focuses a lot on the individual, but it does not focus on the individual's environment. And obviously, sometimes we want to focus on the individual's surroundings and environment, but the HBM unfortunately does not do that. It doesn't focus too much on the person's environment. It only focuses on the individual himself, on the individual's thought processes, cognition, perceptions, beliefs, etc. It focuses on the person himself, and it does a good job focusing on the person, but it doesn't focus on the person's environment at all. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you want to use, or whenever you're thinking about using the HBM. And again, the third bullet is just pretty much reiterating what I said earlier. If you want to change a person's behavior, you need to change the person's beliefs or perceptions. And that's what the HBM suggests. Because our behaviors depend, because the way we behave depends on what we believe, if you want to change a person's behaviors, you need to tackle that person's beliefs, change them. And if you change that person's behavior, or beliefs rather, then you'll change that person's behavior. And that's just the way it is. That's just what HBM states. That's just the premise of HBM. And the last bullet right here is just saying, because a person's beliefs are important, you might want to consider that other person's point of view. So obviously, if you're able to look at things from another person's point of view, you can get a better glimpse and a better understanding of that person's beliefs. If you want to know what a person believes or what a person's beliefs are like, then you might want to look through things through that person's lenses and take that person's point of view. It's easier to get a glimpse of, or it's easier to understand someone's beliefs if you're able to take that person's point of view. And that's basically what I'm saying here in my last slide, or last bullet rather. Alrighty, this is finally we get to the most important slide of this presentation, because these are the 6 constructs of the HBM. We're in slide number 6 now. Perceived susceptibility, perceived severity, perceived benefits, perceived barriers, cues to action, and self-efficacy. These are the 6 constructs of the HBM. And I defined each construct. The definition is below each construct, so I defined all 6 of them. Again, the definitions are right below the constructs themselves. Perceived susceptibility just refers to how susceptible a person feels. or how vulnerable that person feels. Let's just for this slide for this for slide number 6 right here. Let's just use HIV/AIDS as an example of so that we can understand these constructs better. Perceived susceptibility is the first construct, and again, it focuses on how vulnerable a person feels with regards to getting a certain disease. So, using HIV/AIDS as an example, let's say you have a guy and he's very scared of AIDS because he thinks that he's at the probability of him getting AIDS. He thinks that the probability of him getting AIDS is high. He's scared of AIDS because he thinks he's going to get it. Therefore, that guy is said to have high susceptibility. He is said to score high on perceived susceptibility. Um, Now, I should emphasize that this is all based on perceptions. It's all based on what a person perceives. So even though that guy might not be at high risk for developing AIDS or contracting HIV, if he thinks he's at a high risk of developing HIV or AIDS, then he's still considered a high perceived, then his perceived susceptibility is still high. It's all based on what a person perceives. If a particular guy thinks that his risk for developing AIDS is low, then on the other hand, he's said to have low perceived susceptibility because he doesn't feel susceptible or vulnerable to AIDS at all. Even though he may be at high risk for having HIV or AIDS, if he thinks that he's not at high risk, then he is said to score low on perceived susceptibility. Okay, perceived severity is very similar to perceived susceptibility. Perceived severity, the second construct, it's very similar to perceived susceptibility, except perceived severity focuses on how severe a certain disease is, according to a person. Again, this is all based on the person's perceptions. Um, if a person thinks that AIDS is a serious illness, which it is, then that person is said to have high perceived severity because he thinks that HIV/AIDS is serious and debilitating. He thinks it's a severe disease. That's why he scores high on perceived severity because in his mind, in his perception, the severity of HIV/AIDS is high. It's a severe illness. It's a debilitating illness. If, on the other hand, a guy thinks that HIV is a benign, not so serious illness, then he is said to have low perceived severity because he perceives the severity or he doesn't think that HIV is serious. So his perception of HIV/AIDS is that it's not severe and it's not serious. Hence, he scores low on perceived severity. And again, this is based on a person's perceptions. It's not based on what's actually true or not. It's based on what a person perceives or believes, and that's why it's called the health belief model because it focuses on a person's beliefs. Perceived benefits and perceived barriers are the third and fourth constructs, respectively. Perceived benefits basically just refers to the good consequences of undergoing a certain action. So let's take condom use. Let's use condom use as an example for this slide. Condom use is frequently discussed whenever we talk about HIV/AIDS because, as you, of course, they protect you from getting HIV. Now, if a person is thinking about using condoms and he thinks that condoms will prevent him from getting HIV, then that's a good example of perceived benefits. He thinks that there's a benefit to using protection during sexual intercourse. He thinks that there's a benefit to using condoms. And in this case, the benefit would be HIV. I can't get, condoms will prevent me from getting HIV or AIDS. I need to wear protection because it will protect me from STDs and AIDS and HIV and all that. So that's a benefit to using condoms. So that's why it's an example of perceived benefits because he thinks that the benefit of using condoms is protection from STDs. And again, this is based on perceptions, but it's considered this is considered a benefit because he thinks that something good will happen if he uses a condom the next time he engages in sexual intercourse. Perceived barriers is just the opposite of perceived benefits. Perceived barriers focuses on the negative consequences of taking an action. So again, using condom use as an example, if a guy has this one latex allergy that causes him to have an allergic reaction whenever he wears a condom, then that's an example of perceived barriers because that's a negative consequence of undergoing the action. Again, the action is using condoms. If he thinks that if he thinks that condoms will cause his skin to rash or itch or whatever because of his allergy, that's a perceived barrier because that's something bad that happens as a result of undergoing the action, which is using condoms. Um, so that is basically the opposite of the perceived benefits. A benefit of wearing condoms is that you get protection from STDs and HIV and AIDS and and so on. But a bad consequence, a negative consequence, a barrier of using condoms is that you're going to develop a latex allergy in response to the latex on your skin. And so that's why, and so you see what perceived benefits and barriers are. They're just the opposite of each other. That's the third and fourth construct of the HBM of the health belief model. Cues to action is the fifth construct, and cues to action just refers to reminders, things that remind people to do certain things. Like for instance, when I was a kid, my mom would hang these reminders in my bedroom, and they would remind me to brush my teeth because, of course, when we're kids, our parents, our doctors always teach us brush your teeth every night, floss your teeth every night, don't go to sleep without brushing your teeth. It's good for you. It's going to prevent you from having cavities. We're taught that as kids, and of course, sometimes parents they do things to remind their kids to brush their teeth, floss, etc. And again, going back to my example, my mom, when I was a kid, would hang stuff in my bedroom, papers that reminded me to brush my teeth, and that would be an example to cues to action because it's cueing me towards a certain action. It's reminding me to undergo a certain behavior, which in this case is brushing teeth. It doesn't have to be posters or signs though. It can be commercials. It can be PSAs. Another good example would be the anti-tobacco PSAs that are floating around on television and YouTube. I'm pretty sure for those of you who like to go to YouTube, you always stumble upon those anti-smoking, anti-tobacco campaigns and PSAs, and a lot of them are graphic. Before you can watch whatever video you're going to watch, they they shove that 30-second anti-smoking PSA in your face. That's a cue to action because they're getting you to undergo a certain action, which is prevent or avoid cigarette smoking. So that's another good example. The last construct is self-efficacy, and that's just like a person's confidence in undergoing a certain behavior or accomplishing a certain behavior. I gave a good example back down there. Um, in this example, someone is saying, I can eat fast food only once every 2 weeks. It may be a hard task, but I can do it. So this person probably eats a lot of Burger King and McDonald's and wants to lose weight and improve his or her diet. Um, he is saying that eating fast food sparingly is a hard task. It's not easy. It's not easy for me to cut down my McDonald's intake. McDonald's is very good. I love it. It's a good restaurant, and it's hard for me to cut down on it because it's so good. But I can do it. I can. It's within my abilities. And that's a good example of someone with high self-efficacy. Even though it's a hard task, he thinks that he can successfully accomplish it because he thinks that he has the ability to accomplish the task. So that's having high self-efficacy, believing in yourself, thinking that you have the ability to carry out a certain action. Of course, this is very different from self-esteem, and of course, Dr. Largo White mentioned in her lecture that self-esteem and self-efficacy aren't the same thing. You can have high self-esteem because you feel good about yourself, but if you don't think you can undergo a certain action or accomplish a certain task, then you're said to have low self-efficacy. Even though you like yourself, if you don't think you can make changes to your diet, then you're still low in self-efficacy because even though you love yourself, you don't think you can change your diet. So it's all about your abilities and your confidence in changing certain things, your confidence in doing certain things. That's what self-efficacy refers to, not whether or not you respect yourself, which is what self-esteem is. Okay, this is an example of using the health belief model. For this example, let's just say that we have this one girl. She's in her 20s. She's a college-age girl. She's obese and physically inactive. She plays a lot of video games and watches a lot of TV and texts a lot and goes on Facebook a lot. She does a lot of sedentary, inactive things, and we need her to get off her butt because she's obese. So her ideal behavior in this case is exercising on a regular basis. We want her to increase her exercise habits and her physical activity habits. And I just I just included a goal here because that's I work out 4 days a week. That's how much I work out, and I just wanted to be a little more specific. Of course, if you can be more specific, do so because now if you're specific, you're gonna know what to work what you can work towards. So instead of just saying instead of just saying we need her to exercise more, you should say something more specific if you can, like we need her to exercise 3 or 4 days a week, an hour each day, and so forth. And as we learned in Dr. Barr's class, if you have specific goals and objectives, you're going to have a better idea of where you should be and what you're working towards. If you're just having if you have just a general idea or a general goal, then you're not going to really know what direction you need to go to. You're not going to have a sense of direction. You're not going to know what to work, where you need to be. You're not going to know where to go because you don't have a specific goal or objective. So that's why I included a specific goal. And again, our overall goal is for her to get rid of her current lifestyle, which is lack of exercise, sedentary behavior, and we want her to adopt a new, healthier lifestyle that's full of regular physical activity. Um, Hopefully that this will cause her to lose weight. Okay, and in this example, I will give you an example of how to use each of the 6 constructs. Again, we have the first 3 constructs here: the perceived susceptibility, perceived severity, and perceived benefits. Perceived susceptibility again refers to how susceptible or vulnerable a person feels. If she feels that we need to communicate to this girl that being obese is bad because that will put her at risk for certain chronic illnesses such as heart disease and type 2 diabetes. If we say to her, we really you should lose weight because if you stay obese, obese people aren't healthy because they have a higher risk of developing heart disease and type 2 diabetes. If we say that to her, she's going to feel vulnerable and susceptible, and that might scare her into losing weight because she feels vulnerable and at risk for certain health issues. So that might scare her and alert her, and that might motivate her to lose weight because now she thinks that she's at risk for developing chronic illnesses such as type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, etc. And again, perceived severity just focuses on how severe a particular illness is according to a person. So if we communicate to her that type 2 diabetes, heart disease, etc. are bad and debilitating and disabling and serious and deadly, if we communicate that to her, not only will she feel at risk for developing chronic illnesses, but she'll also feel that chronic illnesses are bad and severe. So that will scare her even more, and that might motivate her even more to lose weight and get rid of her obesity and exercise. Again, perceived benefits refers to the good consequences of a behavior. So the behavior in this case, of course, is exercise. If we communicate to her that exercise will help her lose weight and lower her risk of developing chronic illnesses, that will encourage her to work out and that will motivate her to work out because we just associated two good things with getting regular physical activity. Again, those two things are weight loss and lower risk of chronic illnesses. Because those are both good things, and because we associated them with getting exercise, she's going to think that exercise is a good thing. So that will motivate her to exercise because she expects something good to come out of all her physical activity. Okay, again, perceived barriers just focuses on the negative consequences of the behavior. So let's just say, for instance, that maybe this girl does think that exercise is a good thing. Maybe she thinks that exercise will help her lose weight and lower her risk for chronic illnesses, but she doesn't like the fact that exercise can take up so much time. Maybe she has a busy social life. Maybe she likes to socialize and hang out with friends. Maybe she has a lot of hobbies and she doesn't want exercise to take away time from to take away from her social life. She doesn't want exercise to consume her social time. We can address perceived barriers by addressing that because that's a barrier. The barrier in this case would be time constraint. She wants to work out. She thinks that working out is good, but she doesn't want to because she wants to have enough time for friends, family, social events, etc. So we can explain to her that maybe you can manage your time better. If you manage your time better and if you don't if you follow a good efficient schedule, you'll have time to both exercise and do all the social things that you already do. You don't have to give up your social life if you manage your time effectively. You'll have enough time for both exercise and hanging out with friends, family, etc. Cues to action, of course, is again, these are just reminders for the person. We can hang posters in her room, for instance. That will be a cues to action. The posters will remind her to work out, get to the gym, get off your butt. And self-efficacy is the last one. Again, we need her to feel confident that she can exercise and work out. Maybe she doesn't feel too confident in her ability to work out. Maybe she feels that working out is a very arduous and difficult task. We can fix that by having her do easy workouts first. If she does the easy workouts first, she'll probably succeed right away. And she'll say, after succeeding the easy workouts, she'll say, wow, exercising is not that bad. I can do this. Exercise isn't arduous. I thought it was, but it's not. I want to keep exercising because I think I can do it. But if she does the hard workouts right away, that might discourage her because she's going to fail right away. And she's going to say, after failing, she's going to say, oh man, I already failed working out. I already flunked. I can't do this because it's already obvious that I'm not good at working out. So she's going to lose her confidence and her self-efficacy, and that will unmotivate her to work out. So that's something to think about when getting an obese person to exercise. Maybe just start off with the easy ones so that will build their confidence and self-efficacy, and that in turn will motivate him or her to work out. Okay, I need to wrap it up soon because I'm kind of in a hurry now. These are the pros and cons of the HBM. Again, here are some of the pros. Again, the definitions are simple, the constructs are easy to understand. Also, the HBM is not limited in scope. It's not really confined to a particular health issue or topic. It doesn't really matter. You can apply it to any topic or health issue. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter if you're focusing on nutrition, exercise, sexual health, smoking, drinking, etc. You can pretty much apply the HBM to any topic or issue that you want. It's not limited in scope, and that's why I like it because you can use it in almost any situation. Well, you can apply it to almost any topic, I should say. And again, it's a very accurate theory. And having seen the constructs, you should know why it's pretty accurate because For instance, severity and susceptibility. I mean, think about what you see in real life. The people who think that they're susceptible to a disease, they're more afraid of it and they're more willing to take actions against that disease. And the people who think that disease is bad work out more, eat healthy more, right? Because they fear it more. They fear disease more because they think that disease is severe. So because they think that disease is serious, they fear it more, and that makes them want to work out and eat more or eat healthy more. So it's very accurate. It does a good job explaining what happens in real life, right? Okay, these are the two cons that I came up with. Again, it focuses only on the individual, not on the environment. And also, the health belief model is very good, but how you use the constructs and how you apply the theory, it's gonna it will how you apply the theory and the constructs will depend on the target audience that you're working with. So you might apply the theory and constructs one way with one target audience, but with regard to another target audience, you might apply the constructs and theory in an entirely different way. So it just depends. If you don't know what I'm talking about, again, I have to go soon, so kind of got to wrap it up. You can look at pages 39 and 40 in your textbook, but just to make a general statement, if you want to know how to apply the theory or how to apply the constructs, because there's more than one way to apply them, if you want to know the correct way, the best way to apply the constructs in theory, you need to know your target audience. And that can be time consuming and tedious and expensive, and that's why it's a con, because you have to get to know your target population first. You have to survey them, look at them, examine them, etc., before you can even start applying the HBM. And again, that can be tedious, and that's why it's a con. Okay, finally, the last slide. So when should you use HBM? Again, you should use HBM if you know a lot about your target audience. If you don't know a lot about your target audience, you shouldn't use it. Again, this goes back to what I just said. How you use the HBM and how how you should apply the health belief model constructs will depend on your target audience. It will depend on who your target audience is. So if you don't know a whole lot about your target audience, then you shouldn't use HBM. But if you're familiar with if you're familiar with your target audience, if you're familiar with your target population, you might want to think about using HBM, because as long as you know who your target audience is, as long as you know them well, you probably will apply the theory and constructs in the correct way. So that's something to consider. The third bullet is just talking about beliefs and perceptions. Again, health belief model focuses on the individual's beliefs and perceptions. So if you think that the person's beliefs and perceptions are very important, if you think that the person's beliefs are an important determiner, or if you think that the person's beliefs are an important determining factor with regard to behavior, then yeah, go ahead and use it, because health belief model focuses on beliefs. If you think that the person's environment is more important than the person's beliefs, then don't use HBM, because again, HBM does not focus on environment. It only focuses on beliefs. So if you think that the environment is more important, if you think that it's a more important determining factor, don't use HBM. Try to opt for another theory. If you think that the person's beliefs are important, if you think that they're the main determining factor, if you think that the person's behavior is mainly a result of his or her beliefs, then yeah, go ahead and use HBM. And again, the HBM is not limited in scope. You can apply it to almost any health issue or health topic, but the four topics that I listed in the bottom there, physical activity, condom use, healthy eating, stress reduction, in my opinion, those four topics are the most are highly related to the HBM. Whenever you're dealing with any of those topics, healthy eating, condom use, healthy whenever you're dealing with any of those four topics, physical activity, condom use, healthy eating, or stress reduction, if you're dealing with those four topics, you might want to think about using the HBM because those four things depend a lot on a person's beliefs. What we believe influences our physical activity habits, our condom use habits, our healthy eating habits, and our stress reduction habits. And stress reduction, as you know, is stuff like yoga, meditation, and so forth. So again, you can apply it to any theory, but in my opinion, those four topics that I listed down there, again, there's stress reduction, healthy eating, condom use, and physical activity. Those four topics are highly related to a person's beliefs and therefore highly related to the health belief model. And whenever you deal with those four topics, you might want to think about using the HBM because HBM focuses on a person's beliefs. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I kind of rushed through it a little bit. I know I talk kind of fast, but I'm actually in a hurry. I need to upload this right now. So I tried to get through it as soon as I could. But I nevertheless mentioned every slide. I presented every slide. So that's my entire presentation, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and have a great day and great night, guys. Bye.